Now there's a few things that can possibly ruin a ride. One of them can just be an annoying noise that is going to bug you the whole way around your loop. Another one can be a problem that could potentially bring a ride to a halt, meaning you've got to push your e-bike home. Not a lot of fun. And to be honest, a lot of them are quite easy to fix at the side of the trail. Here's how we're going to do it. You can't even begin your ride because you've ran into problems already. Now this one usually happens when you're transporting your bike without the front wheel in it, meaning that the front wheel's been pulled and the front brake pads have closed together, meaning that your front wheel won't even go into the right place, meaning you can't even start your ride. Now how are you going to fix this? So for this one, it's a really easy fix. All you need to do is flip your e-bike upside down. Just be sure to be taking care of your brake levers and your control unit. Maybe put something over your handlebars so you're not scratching those up. Then you need to look at your front brake caliper, see how closed up the pads have actually gotten. Then you need to free them. So depending on the size of the gap, you might want to just start with a small flat blade screwdriver and just open them up a little bit. You just need to go really steady with this because it is quite easy to damage those brake pads. Then work on putting something a little bit bigger in there. I've worked my way up so I can get a tyre lever in there and just wiggling those pads backwards just to open that gap up. Now gap wise, the bigger the better here. Don't worry if you think you've put it too wide or anything. As soon as you squeeze that front brake, they're going to reset back to how they were. Then once you've got those brake pads with a big enough gap to fit your rotor in, you simply plonk your front wheel in as per usual, secure it, flip the bike back up onto two wheels, then give that lever a squeeze. That's just going to restore that bite point on the lever. Then off you go, easy. Now something that can really annoy you on your e-bike rides is your gears not selecting properly. Now one click at your shifter should denote one shift at the rear derailleur, and if you're not getting that, then chances are you need to be checking your barrel adjuster or the cable tension adjuster on your shifter. That way you can be able to adjust that tension and resolve all those shifting issues. So when it comes to adjusting your gears, there is no need to be reaching down for that rear derailleur whatsoever. It's purely going to be down to cable tension, which you can adjust at the shifter end. Now all you need to do is locate that barrel adjuster and adjust the tension there. Now if you are not getting your up shifts nice and crisp, so going up towards your easier gear, then you need to increase that cable tension just to allow that mech to travel up. However, if you're not downshifting properly, then you need to decrease the amount of tension. So wind that barrel adjuster in clockwise into the shifter to make sure that you're not adding too much tension to that. Now the easiest way to do this is a simple road test. Ride along, adjust that barrel adjuster and try your shifting at the same time. You should see some massive improvements. Ooh. Now one thing that can definitely ruin a muddy ride is going to be the dreaded chain suck. And if you don't know what chain suck is, it's where your chain gets jammed between the bottom of your chainring and your chainstay, and it can make an absolute mess, let alone jamming up your e-bike's motor, bringing you to a halt. And it can happen with every chainring revolution, so it is a pretty nasty one. Now this is usually going to happen on a muddy ride where you've got a lot of mud build up around your chainring. Now you need to get off of your bike, clean your chainring both sides using something like a small flat blade screwdriver just to get all that gunk off your bike. Now if you're really prepared, you should have some chain lube in your bag as well, so just make sure your chain is also going to be nicely lubed too. That's just going to help those rollers come off of the chainring as it passes by. So just spend a bit of time cleaning your drivetrain and you should be able to get on your way hassle free. If chain suck stops you in your tracks, you need to stop and switch the motor off. Ideally flip the bike upside down and turn your clutch off on your rear mech too. Or if you're using a SRAM mech, use that lock pin. The idea here is to give you as much free chain as possible. Then it's a case of pulling on the chain from the underneath of your chainring firmly to free it from that jammed area. You need to go steady here as you can scratch and damage your chainstay pretty easily. Once your chain is free, it's worth inspecting it for damage and twisted links too. Now brakes are something you're definitely going to be needing on your e-bike ride. but brakes that rub the whole way round your ride or squeak all the time will simply annoy the hell out of you the whole way round. And it's a super simple fix to get this one right. So if you've got brake noise that is constantly rubbing all your ride, it means that the brake caliper is not centralized over the rotor properly, meaning that one of your pads is constantly in contact, hence that horrible noise. And it's an easy fix for this one. All you're gonna need is a simple multi-tool, probably gonna be a 5mm Allen key or maybe a T25 Torx. And all you're gonna do is just insert the Allen key or Torx bit into the bolts on the back of your brake caliper. There should be 2 on there, and you just undo them to let that brake caliper move nice and freely. Give it a wiggle, make sure it's not rubbing whatsoever. Now, one of the most important parts of this setup is squeezing that front brake or rear brake, whichever one is rubbing, and holding it on throughout this entire procedure until you've tightened those bolts up. So squeeze the lever, then do the bolts up just nice and evenly to make sure that that caliper is going to be nice and centralized over that rotor. Then once you've done the bolts up, then you can release your lever, give that wheel a spin, and it should be running nice and freely. Now, if you've got an intermittent squeak, so not a constant rubbing, you've just got a slight all the time, it could mean that your rotor is bent. Now, again, this is quite an easy fix. You just need to locate where that bend is. So I suggest just spinning the rotor slowly till you see it either contact the pads or you hear it squeaking. Then all you need to do is manipulate that rotor purely just with your thumbs. Just make sure you're not contaminating that rotor with anything. If it's a serious bend, then sometimes you do need the proper tool for the job, but most of those annoying little squeaks you can actually just push with your thumb. So just try and find the stronger part of the disc and push it away from wherever it's rubbing. Give the wheel a spin again, and it should hopefully remove that horrible squeak from your ride. Getting your chain derailed or jammed may happen on some of your e-mountain bike rides, and sometimes with that power of the bike and your leg power, it means that chain can definitely get really jammed in there pretty tight, meaning that a possible walk home might be on the cards. Now, e-bike favorites tend to be off the bottom of the cassette, jamming it between the frame and your cassette, or sometimes overshifting, meaning that it goes off the top of the cassette and gets jammed behind the spokes. Both fairly easy fixes. Here's how. Firstly, you need to turn your motor off and flip your bike upside down. Just make sure you're protecting all your controls. I've got some nice soft moss here, so no damage is going to occur. Then you need to look at your chain jam. But firstly, you need to give yourself a bit of chain to work with. So removing that derailleur spring tension out of the way is definitely vital. Now, if you're using a Shimano system, you've got the clutch on there, just make sure that lever is flicked to off. That way you're not going to be battling that clutch all the time. And if you've got a SRAM mech like I have today, we've got the padlock pin on there. You can push and lock that cage, so it gives you loads of chain to be playing about with and to pull on and hopefully free that jam. Now, you need to look at where the jam is occurring. If it's off the bottom of the cassette, then I suggest just undoing your rear wheel axle a little bit and just allowing that cassette to have a little bit more movement, you know, to allow that jam to come out of it. But if it's jammed in there really tightly, then a nice little way that I've found is to try and locate a bit of chain onto your cassette, then slowly use your leverage of your back wheel just to back pedal the bike. That way you might find that the chain where it picks up on the cassette and with your force of pushing the back wheel backwards, it will actually pull that chain out of the jam. But you need to go steady with this one. Just make sure you're not damaging any components. So some pretty simple fixes for problems that could potentially end your ride or just annoy you the whole way round. Get it sorted. A silent bike makes that ride so much better. But let us know down in the comments box below if you've experienced any problems with your e-bike and what has been your absolute nightmare ride. Love to hear that. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to us here on EMBN by clicking that subscribe button. Don't forget to check out the EMBN shop too for a load of cool merch. See ya soon.